Greetings, I'm Tim DeNoble. I'm Dean of the College of Architecture, Planning, and Design. And my task today is to thank you for being here and ultimately to introduce Stephanie Raleigh, Department Head of Landscape Architecture, Regional and Community Planning. But before I do that, I want to do a simple acknowledgement that this sort of activity is the very lifeblood of this college. Engagement of the practice, industry, and government with this incredible learning and teaching and research institution that we have in service, I should add, not only to advance the knowledge base of our students and really of our faculty as well, but also to advance our community and our society into the future. So I think it's really wonderful in a certain validation, if you will, to be chosen to host this event this year, and I'm very excited to have landscape forums and the Landscape Architecture Foundation say, hey, we want to do this at K-State, and I hope you look back on it and say, we are sure glad we did it there. So thank you very much, and I turn this over to Stephanie Raleigh.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is fantastic to have the Landscape Architecture Foundation and Landscape Forums here at K-State. Their sponsorship of this event is extraordinary. They have brought 20 young professionals from around North America, meaning that they invited them. These people were selected from the very best offices, and then they have hosted them in all of their expenses, along with two internationally recognized landscape architects, Shane Cohen of Cohen & Partners in Minneapolis, and Peter Shout of Horshout in Chicago. They arrived and said, give us a big problem to think about. And we did. I think we have a perfect storm of an opportunity here. Manhattan is engaged in a comprehensive planning process that gives us some ideas about land use and helps us think about how many people there will be in Manhattan in the future and recognizes the tremendous growth that we're going through. So we ask the question, after all of this planning is done, after all of the changes take place in Manhattan, what will Manhattan look like and what will it be like to live here? So we're really thrilled that we have some guests who can help us take these ideas forward. I want to make sure that I recognize the folks who have come today, and so that all of our guests understand who's in the audience. We have some people from the local business associations. So Aggieville Business Association is represented by their president, Aaron Appeal, and the executive director, Rod Harms, who helped us with our tour yesterday. And from the city, we have Ron Fear, who is our city manager, and Rob Ott, who's the director of public works, and Karen Davis, who's the director of community development, and Eric Cattell, who works with Karen as the assistant director for planning, and one of our city commissioners, Rich Jankovich. We also have Karen Hibbert, who's from the Manhattan Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we were fortunate enough to have Trent Armbrust, who's with the Chamber of Commerce, assist us with our tour yesterday. And we have Gary Stith, who is also with us on the tour, sharing his knowledge, and he is the director of the Flint Hills Regional Council. And I think it's wonderful that we have representation from the county. Monty Weedle is here, who takes care of planning and special projects. And most importantly, the people who help us get things built. We have two folks from our development community, Gwen Riffle and Calvin Emig, who can help us think about how we get things moving in the future. So with all of those introductions, I want to let you know that this group arrived in Manhattan on Tuesday at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So, and this Tuesday, they hit the ground running. Fortunately, they drove through the Flint Hills to get here, so they were able to really see the context of our environment, and they very rapidly got to know one another. so that could find out where they shared expertise and where they brought new expertise. And then they got on a bus yesterday morning, toured all over the community, and came back and had an amazing brainstorming session. And from that, this is where you see the really strong leadership that is provided by Shane and Peter. They got everyone focused. They helped get everybody's ideas pulled together in a cohesive way, and then everybody started working like mad. It's not all work, though. They've had some fun while they've been here. They got to have a nice dinner at Coco Bolo's and sit and talk about the things that they've been doing, as well as what they do in their own practices when they're back in their home places. And then this morning, there was a mad dash to get this presentation pulled together for you. I'm going to let Shane and Peter explain the approach that they've taken to answering that question. What will Manhattan look like? And also, what will it be like to live here in the future?
Thank you, Stephanie. My name is Shane Cohen from Cohen Partners, and I'm very grateful to be here and to have experienced the last 40-something hours with this incredible group. I think the value of this exercise, I just want to, after going through it, I just want to give it to every city. Honestly, I mean, you have 20 professionals coming from around the country with a very fresh set of eyes. These are passionate professionals, landscape architects, planners, urban people that specialize in urbanism, coming together and looking at a community that they've never been to before. Only two of the 22 of us, including Peter and I, had ever seen Manhattan, Kansas before. So we drove through the Flint Hills, we came into your community, and we went through an exercise of seeing and really feeling what your community is and what we believe that it could be. And then we trusted the power of the collective, and I promise you, I'm both a designer and a professor. The talent of this group is absolutely enormous. So I'm really excited to give this, to share this perspective to you, and it's been, to me, it's inspiring on what a group can do in such a short period of time and the value that that could have to a city. So I hope that you'll open up your mind. We certainly had, the exercise was not about strictly pragmatics. We had our 12 students that were here that knew Kansas State that was saying, oh, that, you know, that couldn't work, that is a good, so we had the local knowledge base, but we really did dream, but we tried to dream in a way that is actually realistic for you in the future. So again, very grateful and looking forward to it.
My name is Peter Schout, a partner with Harris Schout Landscape Architects in Chicago, and it's indeed an honor to be here today to represent the team leaders for this amazing project. I want to give you a sneak, kind of a preview of behind the scenes, the process. Stephanie described kind of the trips, et cetera. We first went on a bus trip and did a big circle around the city, and then we came back and we wanted to define the problem, and we had everybody in one room. We spent about an hour and a half, and everybody had a couple minutes to pretty much say what they felt. And we had a whiteboard, and we filled it with information, words, ideas. And then from that, we decided what the projects and problems were. And then we thought we need to look at this in a big way, but we also need to look at it in a small way too, so you get a taste of the vast kind of breadth of what we're looking at, but also you could kind of touch and feel it. And after that, we asked people what particular areas you'd be interested in working on, and we wanted this to be a fun experience. And so everybody divided into groups, and then we had two meetings where we brought everybody together and everybody apart. So collaboration is communication and faith in your fellow worker that you're all covering this idea together, and then coming back, and there was a lot of giving in this project. And like Shane said, we all want to thank the students and the professionals for this amazing time, and before you know it, it's over, and I feel that we've been here for about 3 days, when in fact it's been, just a couple days. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nick Godblatt from San Francisco, and we've asked each person to introduce themselves and where they're from so that you get a sense of the perspective.
Hello. That was very close to pronouncing my last name correctly. My name is Nick Godhart. I'm from San Francisco, and I work with a studio called Surface Design.
I'm Taylor Ricketts. I'm a fifth-year planner here at K-State, and I am from Kansas City, Kansas.
My name's Heath House, and I'm a landscape architect from Peter Walker and Partners out of Berkeley, California.
So we'll be introducing the project today, and the name that we kind of landed on is Live Where You Live, bringing the Flint Hills in. This is a concept that really kind of came from two different threads. One was the kind of shared awe that myself and the fellow design team that I came with here to Manhattan experienced in our approach into the city. It was really something that we were not expecting, and even though we've had an amazing time here, I think we all are looking forward to getting on the bus and being able to experience that one more time because it truly is unique. But also, we were really kind of compelled by the energy and the unique character of this place and the faculty, the students, the school as a global education leader, the industry that's coming here, and just the charm of this town. And so the concept that you'll see kind of running through all of these different pieces of our project is kind of embracing the characteristics that, that define Manhattan, but then also drawing on the kind of regional context, which is completely unique to anywhere else in the world. So we've illustrated this in a pretty simple diagram, a concept which is based on the idea of taking that contextual landscape of the Flint Hills and pulling it into the city of Manhattan and using it as a way to thread new systems which improve connectivity and enhance the existing conditions of the city. But of course, also important to our concept is kind of an inventory of some of these existing conditions, which Taylor will explain.
As you guys know, Manhattan has a range of assets that make living in Manhattan a wonderful place. And we really wanted to be able to capture and really celebrate these different assets, such as the Flint Hills, the linear trails, downtown, and of course, K-State. And so this is kind of a theme that we wanted to keep throughout the project.
We were also used a set of principles that was developed by the Landscape Architecture Foundation, which are key to what we do as landscape architects to kind of inform some of the decisions and the projects that you'll see today based on kind of enhancing those existing conditions. So I'll run through a few kind of vision threads that you'll see stream through the series of projects that follow today. One is a sustainable community, a sustainable Manhattan. A Manhattan that encourages and allows for healthy lifestyles and wellness. You'll see these topics kind of play out in different ways, in different kind of spatial configurations and program ways. Community agriculture, so agriculture at the community level, local food, local economy, expanded access to the natural resources, both outside of the city, but also in our efforts to kind of pull that landscape in through Manhattan. Innovative infrastructure strategies, which mitigate stormwater management and use them as a programmatic device for learning, for energy, floodplain restoration, engaging with the waterfront, and overall connectivity, connecting these different centers of activity that already exist here, using that landscape of the Flint Hills. So next I'll introduce Rachel.
So, hi, I'm Rachel Fox. I'm a landscape architecture student here at K-State, and I am from St. Louis, Missouri.
Hi, I'm Shannon Harbers. I'm from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and I work with CSW Landscape Architects.
Hi, my name is Sian Lim with Terraplan Landscape Architects in Toronto.
So, in our very brief visit and tour of Manhattan over the last few days, we've really had the opportunity to experience kind of the unique character that is and beauty that is Manhattan. So our group had the opportunity to look at kind of those existing features and existing pockets of potential.
So first up, we'd just like to point out on this map, the teal color that you see are areas that we're going to touch on but weren't further developed by the other teams, and the gold areas are more specific site strategies that they're going to talk about very shortly. So the first place we'd like to talk about that's a great place of potential is Poyntz Avenue. You know, in the past year, they redid the streetscape down there. There's a lot of moving and shaking that's really exciting to see. This is a great area for shopping and dining, and it's a destination for young professionals and local citizens. And slowly we'd like to, you know, kind of bring the college atmosphere into it and really work on making this a holistic community and not particular sections for each person. And as we all know, it terminates at Manhattan Town Center Mall. So the next is Aggieville. It's a really, really walkable place. It's very close to the university. It's high concentration on nightlife businesses, but we've also been making a move to make it more of a family-friendly environment. A couple weeks ago, you know, we had the Aggieville 125th celebrations, seen tons of families out there, and it was just a really great way to see the space activated, not just at night. Like we said, there's a lot of up-and-coming daytime businesses. Varsity Donuts is a staple, of course, and Acme is wonderful for all sorts of things. City Park. This is a huge amenity that I don't think we really capitalize on. It's 40 acres, and there's not too many other cities that have that big of a spot really close to downtown. And it's a very big connection point between what's happening down in Aggieville and what's happening on Poyntz. Perception-wise, they seem like they're really far away, but you can get to Aggieville and Poyntz, it's less than a mile. It's actually really quick. So there's a varied use of recreation down there. You have the pool, you have the spray ground, the rose garden, a lot of things that are working really well, and then there's also some opportunities to improve those things. Right now, it kind of has a low-profile, nondescript park edge. We really think that this is such a good amenity, and we'd like to see it, you know, kind of programmed a little stronger. And last, we're going to be talking about the gateway. So the entrance to the city off of, coming off of 70 and then on to, I think it's 144, 177. So right now, when you're coming up that way, you know, you hit the back edge of the mall and a big expansive parking lot, and that's really a big front for our city. So there's a lot of things we could do with that. It really can bring in some gaps between making this a walkable downtown Manhattan center. You know, right now, we kind of divert going down Poyntz. We go down Pierre, you make the little circle drive, and then out onto Tuttle Creek. But it has really a lot of opportunity to really give some character for that first perception that people are having to our town.
The big box. We love it. We love to hate it. What we've seen is that there's an increasing vacancy. It is vehicle-oriented. It's difficult to access without a car, and it's low density and expansive. Its potential is to imagine it as the vacant spaces as mixed-use development, to integrate it with, you know, your big box stores, but to also have residential, to have small businesses, big businesses, and also to integrate biking, pedestrian connections so that it is more accessible, and also integrated with sustainable landscape interventions to mitigate or to help with the stormwater management in this area. The stadium, it is impressive. It has an expansive surface events parking. It's an icon for Manhattanites. It's adjacent to hospital, research facility, and university-owned apartments. One of the opportunities that could be explored are the potential for additional uses during off-peak hours, such as the farmers market, or thinking of using sustainable materials to help with stormwater management in terms of the surfacing of the parking lots, such as permeable pavers, integrate bioswales, or reinforced turf. Lastly, the research facility. It is a new development. It's projected future growth for Manhattan. It is a center for innovation, and think big, basically, is what we see it as. And I'm going to introduce the next presenter, Cody, who will talk about connections and transportation.
My name is Cody Smith. I am a landscape architect from Orlando, Florida, and I work with Dix Height and Partners.
My name is Tim Slasnick from St. Louis, Missouri. I am with HOK.
My name is Ross DeVault. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I'm a student here at the Landscape Architecture Department.
All right, so we've been here, we actually went out on site about 24 hours ago, which is, you guys make it sound easy. You know, you said like 2 days? I don't think so. It was 24 hours ago that we went out and I took that shot 24 hours ago on site. Came back, met, talked a lot, and then did a lot of work in that 24 hours. That being said, we are going to focus on a lot of tactics. We went through your downtown, we saw a lot of great opportunities, and we wanted to focus on those specific opportunities. We won't touch on every street or every corridor, but we're going to touch on a lot of them. So it's important to think about a street. A street is more than just a thing that carries cars. And we need to think about it actually as a corridor. It's from building face to building face. And a street needs to serve a lot of roles within our community. It needs to provide access for retail and shopping, parking, on-street parking to meet the demands for that retail. It needs to have vegetation both above head and at your feet level. And then also it needs to capture stormwater. I think this is one of the most important new concepts that most cities don't integrate, but it actually needs to capture the stormwater before it goes into your rivers. It needs to carry cars, people, bikes, and hopefully buses all together, and it needs to do so very well as it needs to act as a service element for all the elements along that street. It's important also to think about streets as public spaces. If you think about the amount of streets in a downtown, it actually makes up the most public space in most downtowns, I would say all downtowns. So we should treat them like parks and not as thoroughfares. And they actually, as Nick mentioned, the connections actually set up the framework and the overall kind of guide for how a city is going to develop. If your streets are correct, your development will follow suit. And it's important also to think about creative options. When you start to look at a corridor like this, or you start to look at a street that's really wide, think about what could happen in that corridor. The components of a street are actually pretty significant, and they're actually pretty, like the small details. One of the most important things is actually appropriately scaled architecture to the right-of-way width. So we want narrow travel lanes. We want transparency on our architectural storefronts. We want people, bikes, and cars to be able to use that corridor equally. And we want, like a really wide sidewalk typically. We want 18 feet at a bare minimum. And it needs to support dining, walking, and furnishing, as well as the mentioned stormwater planters as well. So the concepts that we're going to show you actually have been in place for a very long time, and they're still in place today, and they're still happening in cities all over the United States. Just to show you a couple of examples, this is Greenville, South Carolina, a very small town in South Carolina. In the 1960s, they actually decided to redefine the way that they were treating the street. They took a 6-lane road through their main street, road dieted it to 2 lanes, on-street parking, and street trees, and this was done by Lawrence Halprin in the late 60s, installed in the early 70s. This is it at installation. So going from 6 lanes to 2 lanes and parking and street trees, and this is it today. It's consistently voted one of the top 5 best main streets in the United States every single year. Another great example that's a little bit different, a little bit more modern, is this idea of really giving priority to bikes and connections. This is in Indianapolis, Indiana, the Indianapolis Cultural Trail, where they actually took 1 to 2 travel lanes out of almost every single one of their downtown streets and gave it back to bikes and parking. And this is it right at installation. They took advantage of leftover spaces and alleys, gave lighting, outdoor seating, and opportunities. Art along the corridor was a huge improvement and a great opportunity to get people using the space. And then the image on the left, you can see just one stretch, the impact that it has on the street. You can imagine that there were 2 more travel lanes there. And another image, the fact that it actually conveys and captures stormwater as well as provides the great asset of bikeway connections. And then even at a smaller scale, we think about it a lot at the macro scale and these big ideas, but we also want to point out there's some very small details that can be done tomorrow. These are both in Portland. The one on the right is actually designed in and takes some thought and ideation. The image on the left is actually just put in place. You could go out and do it on any one of your residential streets. It captures stormwater as well as it serves to slow traffic and provides extra vegetation on your streets. So as we jump into the specific streets, we did read through the 2035 Manhattan Transportation Plan. And what we pulled out of that is definitely that there's tons of opportunities and that things need to happen. And that's what we really want to focus on. It didn't really get into too much detail other than the fact that it needs to be multimodal and it needs to be a shared space, which we'll get to.
So what we're going to go with now is we did a series of diagrams here to kind of show the analysis that we went through in looking at the city. The first of which is really an exercise looking at proximity within the city of Manhattan. So the kind of myriad of circles that you see on the screen there represent different walking distances within the city. The smaller red ones are a quarter mile, which is really just a 5-minute walk for the normal person. From there, we have a larger half-mile ring, which would be 10 minutes if you can do the math as well as I can, and then up to a mile, which would really be a 20-minute walk. So you can see the majority of the metropolitan area of Manhattan is really within that 1-mile radius, which would be not much more than a half-hour to 45-minute walk from one side to the other, which, you know, in the grand scheme of things is not that large. Also, kind of behind this image, you can see we have City Park called out in green here, as well as some of the major arterial streets that you're seeing in white that are labeled. The other important factor that we wanted to call in as we are looking at transportation is the linear trail and kind of how it kind of covers the southern expanse of the city, but really doesn't really lead to or from any specific location. So this is kind of hearkening back to the group that was before us and looking at these, I think they call them pockets of possibility. We like that. So just to keep those in mind as we show you these connections that we're looking at and see how the proposition of these additional connections can really tie these things together, as right now they're slightly disjointed. These are the big entrances into the city. These are important, obviously, because they're bringing everyone here. They're bringing all of the people here, but they're also bringing the traffic here. The idea here is really to look at how do we handle that volume, but also how do we celebrate that entrance. All of these are important places to see the city from, and how can we really address that. And then we get to what we saw as the barriers. Some of these are physical barriers, obviously crossing the river when you're coming in on 177. You have the levee wall, you have the train tracks, you're kind of landing. There's a lot of circulation that you have to go through to get really anywhere in the city. That's a physical barrier, but there's also quite a few perceived barriers. Looking all around the K-State campus, Manhattan and Denison really don't have a huge pedestrian volume that they can accommodate. A lot of streets dead end into those streets. They don't have a lot of bicycle occupancy because they don't have the amenities to account for that. Also, of course, Bluemont and Anderson, huge arterial street right through the middle of town. Not too fun to cross, as we found out this weekend, or this week, I should say. The other small one that I think is very important is kind of this perceived barrier between Aggieville and City Park, which I think Rachel touched on. They're really not that far away, but it feels like they're a completely different area. So we're going to kind of apply some of the images and some of the concepts that we've talked about so far to some of your existing conditions. These are by no means prescriptive. You don't have to build it this way, but this is just kind of a reimagining of some of the sites that we saw this week. So this is Blue on Avenue, obviously that huge arterial through downtown. It's 4 lanes. There's not parking on either side. It's pretty intimidating to cross. So looking ahead, this is something that it could be. You can see we're narrowing traffic lanes. We're allowing for parking, but we're expanding sidewalks to allow for cafes or other street uses to kind of expand out onto the right-of-way. We're incorporating, tall grass prairie species that can really convey the meaning of Manhattan and why we're here and the beauty of this, but also, potentially handle stormwater needs as well. So looking at the connections, again, we'd love to look at every single street in the town, but where we really saw the largest importance were these larger kind of bold arrows in green here. Really the same streets that we showed as barriers before, kind of bounding the University, Bluemont and Anderson, as well as Points Avenue and the connection up to Aggieville and down to the waterfront. This is Points Avenue today. As Rachel said, new streetscape. We love angled parking, but just a reimagining of what it could be. Again, we're widening sidewalks, we're narrowing traffic lanes, we're adding in bike lanes. We're also adding a very large planted area that can, again, accommodate stormwater, but also provide tree canopy, and it really creates a much more comfortable, all-inclusive space for everyone to use. Now, we know that a bus line was something that was looked through in the recent past, but just as outsiders coming into the city and seeing how people get to one place from another and having kind of in-depth conversations with students about getting to the stadium on game day and the struggles with that, especially with driving, we did kind of see a really simple loop that remarkably kind of falls on the same loop we took on our tour, because it seems to hit a lot of the high points in the city. And it goes down all of the major avenues where almost all of the commerce is, and it's hitting all of those shopping centers, all of those parks, and all of the places that people want to go, and it's a very simple loop system. And then looking at recreation, obviously not everyone wants to ride a bike on a street, not everyone wants to walk down a sidewalk, but you have a great system in place with the linear trail. But how can that extend up to the north side and really make a comprehensive loop through the city? And then how can we have spurs off of that trail that lead you into key points within the city and then connect you to those street systems that are addressing bicycles as well? So here's a street, 14th Street today. It's a fairly wide street. Not a lot of traffic in this picture, but a fairly well-traveled residential street. Has good tree canopy, but what could it be beyond what it is? Again, we're narrowing those traffic lanes. We're providing a protected bike lane here, so it's not on the street with the cars. It's separated. This is a more residential area with higher bike volume. But we're really kind of enhancing the natural beauty that's there. We're extending the planting out further into the corridor, and we're allowing for all modes of transit to take advantage of this street. So with that, I'll pass it off.
And so what we really want you guys to understand, that we've come to understand, is that this has been a 24-hour process. This is by no means comprehensive. This is by no means all-inclusive of what Manhattan is facing for the future and what needs to happen. But we do want to leave you with some recommendations. One of those recommendations, first and foremost, is that we think we need to take an inventory of all the streets in town. We need to develop a comprehensive master plan, which we can bring in experts in walkability, we can bring in experts in bicycle infrastructure, and we can bring in experts from all over the country that can take a look at our streets at a different level and from a different light than we understand them now, to really understand how they can become more multimodal, how they can convey the stormwater and all these different things that we've talked about. So with that, we think it's important for us to develop a streetscape master plan, to develop a bicycle master plan, which looks not just 10 years in the future, but 30, 40 years in the future. And so how to get there, we're talking about, we need to do some experimentation with traffic calming. We need to think about how we can reduce vehicular traffic. And that can be done in a variety of ways, whether it be temporary infrastructure. But really, we want to convey to you guys that this is just the first step in a process. And it's a process that we need to change the ideology, and we need to change the vision that we have for what the streets are used for in Manhattan. And with that, we'd like to pass it on to the Stormwater and Infrastructure Group.
Hello. As they said, we are this team that's been studying stormwater and infrastructure for Manhattan, Kansas. My name is Aubrey Weeks. I'm from Seattle, Washington. I work for a firm called Methuen. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Hello, I'm Jenna Jones. I work for Site Design Group in Chicago.
Hi, I'm Emily Bijot. I work for Damon Farber Associates in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we all know that infrastructure is an important, it's a necessary piece of every city's framework, but we don't often think of it as strongly contributing to our place's identity. So in addition to bringing in the prairie as a way to define Manhattan's identity, the Tallgrass Prairie is also an excellent green infrastructure resource, specifically for stormwater management. So we've focused our presentation primarily on that. So tall grasses are an amazing natural system that is really perfectly suited to infiltrating and treating stormwater. We took a look at historical hydrology patterns and systems and how we could reintegrate them into Manhattan's future. So why is water important? Why did we focus our infrastructure why did we prioritize that into this program? Water, you might have heard the phrase that water is the next oil. It's precious and it's becoming increasingly scarce. Water is something we need, but it also offers a lot more. So for Manhattan, water can provide a valuable connection, a connection between people, a physical connection between places. It can provide education all the way from kindergarten into research and university. Again, it provides identity. It can be a community aspect, a gathering place, and an aspect that brings Manhattan together. And lastly, stewardship, we feel, is really important, from the city level down to the individual level, to business owners, to you as individuals. So how do we achieve something of this scale? Really, it needs to be looked at from a very large scale down to a very small scale. So the big picture down to you as individuals, down to the stewardship level. And we've listed here a couple of those techniques and those approaches. So from a watershed-wide approach, making these natural processes visible and treating the water at the source, treating the water at the Flint Hills, as well as at the sources down in the city. Developing collaborative education projects, embracing this beautiful place, and balancing these natural systems with more traditional infrastructure. Next at the regional level is celebrating water with large-scale infiltration projects, designing these places not just for water and for infrastructure, but also for people, for wildlife, for plants, using these amazing native plant systems that we've discussed, and creating destinations. At the next level is corridors and networks. And we'll talk about utilizing public right-of-ways, reusing rainwater, and then a couple of the other elements that can be involved there. And lastly, the stewardship level. Incentives for private property owners, which includes rainwater harvesting, reuse, reducing lawn, education and pilot programs, and ambassador programs. So what does this look like at the big picture? This plan sort of illustrates bringing the Flint Hills down into the city through plant species and through stormwater integration. So bringing those down with the major corridors into the city and increasingly, in some way, taming them from the very natural systems that they are in their natural setting into more engineered systems that do the same thing. And so you'll see here a couple of, can you do an overlay the next one? So how these overlay with our key areas, the campus, Aggieville, downtown, the hotel district, and also very important is the river. So integrating these principles into existing open spaces, such as City Park, but also developing new key open spaces that Aubrey will talk about. prioritizing main streets for streetscape improvements. We saw quite a bit of this with the transportation groups images, and you'll see more with us, supporting public and private projects, and also buffering the river and making that not just a place that is more environmentally valuable, but also valuable for people.
Right on. So we've been imagining two kind of big strategies or ideas for how this might really change the place and change the experience of Manhattan. And I think there are two really great opportunities here. There's the need for connections. We've been talking a lot about how these great special places are in the city, but that nobody walks between them, that it's not really set up for that. So, here we have kind of a typical residential street in Manhattan. It has these great simple houses. It's got great trees. They're alley loaded, so circulation can come from behind the house and you can kind of walk around. And so the opportunity that we saw here was that what if we turned this into a secondary circulation system? So what if this was a conduit for water and for bicycles and for people, and it connected you in between these places that are so important to the town, but it also brought in a little bit more of the Flint Hills, a little bit more of kind of the phenomenal nature of the seasons, of wildlife, of the fluctuation of students passing by your house during the school year, and then the time when it kind of quiets down and everybody goes home. So, and we can imagine that as there's increasing density, maybe these houses become more attractive to families, and then you could build in between the houses. And so you add a little more density into the existing fabric, but maintaining that really like small town, lovely feel. And so this particular street that we're imagining actually aligns with the historic path of Campus Creek on the campus here. And so we can imagine a kind of hybrid of a natural and engineered solution that brings this creek back as a connector between the places, but offers a little bit more of a modern solution to that idea of daylighting a creek. Right, so we can go to the next. So our second opportunity site was the relationship between the, Manhattan and the Kansas River. So, of course, the development of Manhattan is simultaneously related to the river. People came here because it was a rich place right by the rivers. But then as increasing pressure on land, as the city began to grow, we had to put up these really elaborate engineered solutions like levees to hold that river back. So we're wondering, what if we peeled back the levee? What if we had, a setback to the levee that gave a little bit more land to the floodplain, that allowed a beautiful restored grassland to be your entry sequence into the town? What if this was a place where you could go for a walk in the grasslands and watch the sun come up and see the migrating birds that are so special to this area? So these are just a couple of ideas, some dreams we had that we wanted to share with you for kind of ways to incorporate something that really sustains people and natural systems.
So we've talked about a framework today of big to small, and we've showed you a couple of big ideas, but we wanted to close by taking a step back and thinking about how you could begin to approach implementing some of these types of practices. So there's a couple of precedents that we've listed here. There are many more out there, but these we felt were particularly relevant due to the context and the scale, and all of them showcase sustainable stormwater practices from a policy perspective, from a design perspective, and they use it as an educational tool, which is really valuable. This can also help build awareness. It helps excite and engage residents in their communities, which we feel is very important. So we see implementing stormwater practices in Manhattan as an opportunity to grow within the current footprint of the core. to attract new residents into this area and engage the current residents within the core as a way to sort of limit what sprawl happens as the city continues to grow. We see it as an opportunity to foster health and well-being and contribute to a better quality of life. So the focus here is growing Manhattan sustainably. Thank you. The next group will be talking about growth.
Hello, everyone. Our group's going to talk about growth and some ideas and strategies on how to deal with growth. My name is Matt Lazier. I'm a landscape architect with MKSK out of Columbus, Ohio.
Hi, I'm Meredith Epley McWilliams from Gensler in Houston.
And my name is Timothy C. I'm a fifth-year architecture student here at K-State. So together we're here to look at growth. In the next few decades, Manhattan is going to grow, but we shouldn't be scared of the growth. We encourage growth and we want to grow. But we want to be able to ensure that we control this growth in Manhattan by avoiding sprawl and avoiding the uncontrolled density. Can you go back? By 2035, a statistic has shown that there will be around 20,000 new residents here in Manhattan. They will be coming from the National Bio and Agro Defense Facility that will be built north of campus and be built and operational by 2020. The Kansas State University, as we head towards the K-State 2025 vision, and the Fort Riley. Along with these new residents, there will be around an estimation of 10,000 new housing units that will need to be able to supply for these new residents here in Manhattan. In order to control this growth, we want to have a mission and set goals for ourselves. So our mission is to accommodate for this growth and to create a higher quality of life and to preserve and enhance the beautiful surroundings landscapes that surround us here at Manhattan. And along with that, we created 4 different strategies that we can apply to the growth of Manhattan to ensure that we accommodate for the growth that we have here.
Okay, so first we're going to talk about kind of the big picture strategy. Our first one is to grow in and up. And by up, I don't mean skyscrapers. I mean 3- or 4-story buildings, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a second. We have 3 ideas on how to do that. One is cluster housing in kind of the more rural areas, so clustering houses together and then creating more preservation and open space in those developments. The second is to limit growth on hillsides. So when you look out onto hillsides, you don't see houses, you see the Flint Hills, which we all want to preserve as much as possible. And the last one is to think about some kind of urban growth limit. And there's policy applications of that, there's practical applications of that. A really great example is Lexington, Kentucky, where they have horse farms. Horse farms are a really important cultural amenity, economic amenity, and they really wanted to protect and preserve those because they're an important part of the economy. So that's an idea on how to protect the Flint Hills because that's an important part of this economy and culture.
So the second strategy we want to touch on is providing for diversity. We know that we have this growing population to accommodate, and we know that there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to meeting this need because this population is very diverse. We have students, young professionals, families, and increasingly an active retiree population here. So we need to provide a range of housing sizes, types, densities, and also price points. Now, one strategy that we do think is applicable to all of these different housing types is integration, integrating the new development into what already exists. And we want to advocate for mixed-use development, as we've already talked about a little bit. What we're showing here is an illustration of how you might increase the housing density in Aggieville along Morris Street, where there's currently a surface parking lot. And what we're proposing is building vertically so we can maintain the street life at the ground level. We're showing a second level of office space that serves as a buffer between the nightlife and upper residential units. And by setting back the upper stories of this taller growth, you still maintain the existing scale and nature of this great place that already exists here in Manhattan.
All right, and our fourth strategy is to fill the gaps. So we'd already heard about kind of centers and corridors. And what we're suggesting here is to really focus on the gaps between those centers for potential development. And you kind of solve two problems at once. You solve the issue of the gaps themselves. So that's a kind of an urban design problem. But you also start to work towards solving the housing issue of 10,000 units that you need. So you kind of see the line there connecting the centers. We really feel that's where development should be focused, incentives should be focused, maybe make development easier in those areas, maybe actually provide tax credits or other kinds of strategies, but really focus on that first and then kind of grow out from there. On the right here, we show an example basically from Aggieville down to the park. And we're just showing some potential infill development projects in the yellow there. And that's about 6 or 7 projects, 3-4 stories with parking on the ground floor. And that represents about 300 housing units. So that starts to take a chunk out of that 10,000 that we need, really in a pretty small area that really focuses on the needs of students and young professionals. So that's it for us. The next group, we're going to shift gears a little bit and transition to a more site-specific scale. First up is Aggieville and Points Avenue.
Hello, everybody. My name is John Champlin. I am a landscape architect with EDSA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I'm also a proud graduate of Kansas State. Go Cats. Our group is focusing on the Aggieville district through City Park and into Points Avenue downtown.
Hi, I'm Katie Paisecki. I am an architectural designer at JPRA Architects out of Detroit, Michigan.
I'm Kaylin Pomerano, and I'm a landscape designer out of the Phoenix office of Norris Design.
Hi, I'm Sarah Swaim, and I'm from Tonganoxie, Kansas, and I'm a 5th-year student here in interior architecture and product design.
Hi, I'm Joe Gingrandy from Land Design in Washington, D.C.
I'm going to try and move in here a little bit. I'm Drew Vanderwert from Denver, Colorado. I'm a landscape architect with Davis Partnership Architects.
Hi, my name is Rodrigo Buelbas. I'm from Colombia, working in Chicago office with Skidmore, Owens & Merrill. So I'm going to give the brief introduction to Aggieville. I think it's kind of funny because this is the homecoming parade, right? And when we decide to go out there and experience this area, we find this character here, which was our homecoming. And we thought about it like, oh my God, it's nice how we can convert all this space in a different way rather than being just nightlife. How we can start incorporating or interconnecting different areas from all previously explanation with Aggieville. So we find that ourselves trying to think about 3 main components, so 3 main concepts, how we achieve this. First, you have to dream about it. The second one, you need to create something. And the third one is socialize. I think we need to engage ourselves in our community to socialize. So coming back to these 3 main components, we say, okay, how we achieve this in a near future, but as well in a long future. These 3 components, we thought about that basically can work in a triangular way, how to become either a cycle, and see how we can dream to start creating. For us, we thought about that dreaming, we need to start engaging the generations. I think there is a broad disconnection between our generations here at Manhattan, Kansas. We need to start exploiting local businesses, and that's going to extend to all these areas that we have touched already. Then after that, if we create, we need to empower that socialization between our community. We think that we need to reinforce the city attributes. The city has a lot of attributes. We need to refresh, renew these attributes to the community. And then time to establish these new ways of interaction based on that attributes. And again, coming to socialize and dream and how we look the bigger spectrum. This is something that we want to achieve now, but this is something that we need to see it in a long run. We need to promote different approaches of city growth and then create that basic foundation of what is a happy city. Basically, we're going to go focus in these three main components. We find that Agleeville, it can be a dynamic scenario for business development. The park, it's basically the main epicenter for social interaction between these two gaps. And then get to know the new beginning of a city welcoming, how we approach this and how we start connecting these two areas with the campus as well.
Here we have some existing precedents that we took into consideration thinking about similar scales as to what Manhattan has. Some of the top 3 images are located outside of Denver in Lakewood, Colorado in the Belmar district, and these are all 3, 4-story buildings that incorporate a lot of mixed-use residential office, even big box stores that you would typically think that we have here in Manhattan on the outskirts, and how you can actually integrate them with, you know, sexy architecture and walkability and just this connectivity of, you know, bringing people together and just, instead of having this big, ugly strip mall, bringing it down to a more personal and intimate scale. And then these are some of the things that we really wanted to hit on: greening our streets, incorporating artful stormwater management, activating our streetscapes, enhancing the pedestrian experience, improving pedestrian safety, and just really creating a bike-friendly atmosphere. Like they said before, Manhattan, you can get kind of anywhere in a mile, and what better way to experience such a great place than either by foot or by bike?
So we took what we learned from the precedent study from successful projects around the nation and tried to apply it to really what we felt was the heart of Manhattan here, starting up at K-State University, the campus, through Aggieville, down to City Park, which we'll look at design for right after this presentation here, and then down Points Avenue into the downtown area, where we end up at the Gateway, which another group has looked at as well. So if we begin up at K-State, one of the big moves we made to connect Aggieville with K-State was to try and provide a nice park atmosphere and a safe, beautiful crossing in that area. And that moving down into Aggieville there, we made a couple big moves there. This is Manhattan Street, which we thought would be a nicer street as just a pedestrian street. And this street would be able to connect City Park with the campus up there, terminating in this park. And then the main street, Morrow Street, we also decided to close that off to cars as well altogether, which creates a really nice, scale, pedestrian scale, and really activate the space. The orange here that you're seeing is some of the density another group looked at and we looked at as well. Along Aggieville there, the past group talked about adding the bars and restaurants at the bottom, then office and residential up at the top. The office is a nice way to bring in some of that daytime use and really activate the space during the day. Because right now, Morrow Street during the day is not very active. So the offices will bring that daytime use. And then after the offices start to transition out, the bars and restaurants start to activate really nicely. So then we connect Aggieville to the City Park there with a lot more density around that. Some of the architecture can start to look over the park and make some really beautiful views and living space there. All that's mixed use there. And then along Points Avenue, we also decided to increase the density a little bit higher and really make that a town center, a real bustling, dense city there. So just looking at the massing of what Aggieville is right now, we're looking at mostly a few two-story buildings in there. If we move on, we start to densify the Aggieville and really create a nice space for a nice scale for Morrow. And then this is what all that orange and green would look like on a dense scale. And then looking at Bluemont Street here, this is what it is right now. Concrete, we have one, the new hotel there, 6 stories, 5 stories. And if we add some of that density, this is what it could look like here. Add some trees, some nice median planting that starts to mimic and create a gateway into K-State and Aggieville. And then Morrow Street here is a typical section. This is the existing section. We have angle parking, parallel parking, and 1 lane down the middle. And we thought, you know, in plan view here, this could create some really nice spaces. You know, have some of the bars and restaurants spill out into the street. And in section here, some of the, you know, increasing the height of the buildings, the courtyard space, adding trees and a lot more pedestrian life. So this is what that could look like. This is the existing Morrow Street, and with more density and trees and pedestrian life. And we looked at Points Avenue here. Right now, very wide street, less, very small pedestrian access along there, short buildings. And if we add some of that density and life that the transportation group looked at, this is what Points Avenue could look like with 4 stories, 5 stories, roof decks, residential mixed-use buildings. So we'll look at City Park next.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Mayhill, and I'm from Council Grove, Kansas, and I'm a grad student here in interior architecture and product design.
Hi, I'm Katie Lizey. I'm a 5th-year landscape architecture student here at Kansas State, originally from Omaha, Nebraska.
Eric Sylvie, Clark Henderson in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Hi, I'm Teague Peak. I'm a 5th-year IAPD design student here at Kansas State University. I'm originally from Topeka.
I'm Daniel Mesher from Houston, Texas with M2L Associates. So we wanted to talk to you guys about City Park, and the first thing you might wonder is, why City Park? We, as some other groups have mentioned, had a nice little bus tour around town, and we got to drive by it pretty quickly, but it immediately jumped out at us as definitely a really interesting place. One of the first things we all noticed was the trees. There's amazing trees in this park already. There's some huge trees, there's all kinds of different variety of trees, and I think that's one of the things that makes it a really wonderful place. Another thing was the size. This is a huge park for the scale of this city. It's 40 acres, which is, as we can all attest from walking all around it yesterday, it's really big. And it's in a great location. It's right in the heart of the city. It's got great visibility from all around because it takes up, it kind of follows that grid pattern. Another thing we all noticed as we walked around is that the existing program is extensive. There's so much stuff going on out there, and we're gonna hit on that later in the presentation. And the last thing is the opportunity. I think all 5 of us noticed that, excuse me, this park has a wonderful opportunity to be transformed into something truly unique and special for the community.
Right, and as just a fellow Manhattanite of 5 years and kind of living here off and on, I think this is something that we should really, really seriously consider. We have such this grand opportunity, and if we have the ability to make it happen, we really need to facilitate that.
So the first thing we want to talk about is some of the existing program elements. You can see kind of just, obviously the dark green square in the center represents the park, and then the colors represent some of the different uses that are going on out there. Some of the stuff that we noticed when we were out there, there's baseball fields, tennis courts, basketball courts, there's a sand volleyball area, there's a horseshoe pit, there's a swimming pool and a splash park, which I'm sure is really popular in the summertime here. There's a really, really nice playground. There was a ton of kids out there using that while we were there. There's a performance stage with nice little bleachers set up. And there's even an ice skating rink, which is what I was told from some of the local folks, which being from Houston was kind of a shocker to me, but that's really, really cool. So I think Teague's gonna talk about.
Yeah, before and after, you wanna switch around over for me? Great, so we have the existing over here on the left, and then our sort of proposed plan over here on the right. When the park originally started, and this is the same for all parks across the nation, they start simple with a purpose and a very core idea. But as time goes along and these differing needs and desires develop within the community, they're sort of tacked on. And we see here it's kind of become this sort of disjointed, inefficient collection of spaces. So in our proposal, we really want to bring it back down to the core simplicity of what a space could be through multiple use, flexible uses. And so we've really illustrated that multiple use core, this sort of strong value of community. And then around the peripheral, we'll see the more programmatic needs and then sort of the gateways into that area.
So if we're going to take a closer look at the image that was on the right, this is the same one, just a little bit bigger. The first thing that probably jumps out at you is there's a giant bright green circle right in the middle of the park. And that, what we've labeled on here, we called it the Great Lawn. We think that would be a really special place. Maybe actually remove some of the structured programming from the park and create a space that can accommodate a lot of different needs and users, citizens, all kinds of different activities from large to small scale. And then the purple, or I guess the blue-purple around the outsides is actually going to represent the more structured programming. So we've kind of pushed that to the outside. So what will happen is you see from going around the park is you'll be able to see that stuff going on and then see through to the open space in the middle. Another thing we noticed is that there is kind of a couple of big pedestrian nodes in the existing park, and those are in the pinkish purple fuchsia color. We call that the gateways. So we've got a campus gateway and then a gateway towards the downtown area. One other thing I want to point out on this map is we did remove all of the vehicular circulation and parking from within the park. We want to make that all pedestrian space. So the smaller dotted line is actually representing pedestrian connectivity, so or even bicycle connectivity, so walking, cycling, skating, rollerblading, all those kinds of uses. And then all that other vehicular circulation we push to the outside of the park. So let's take a look at the reimagined plan.
Great, I'm gonna sneak over here so I can get a better view. So throughout this entire presentation, we've really been emphasizing this idea of connection, community, et cetera, et cetera. So in order to connect these, three differing areas, we've got the core, which we have here, and then we have Aggieville District, and then we have points in downtown. So in order to connect those, we've really emphasized this great lawn by consolidating all of these sort of disjointed, sort of smaller spaces into this large communal area, which leads to the proposed event plaza. We want a space that is entirely flexible, open to all sorts of needs. Purple Power play on points, farmers markets. There's a huge opportunity to integrate the community further into the core. And then, as you can see, we have our programmatic needs sort of reaching around the peripheral, and then these sort of fingers that come in. These are continuations of the current city grid, such that the surrounding adjacent neighborhoods kind of flow seamlessly into it, rather than this item sort of being placed on top. Additionally, there are structural areas within the park that can be leased to local businesses, vendors, perhaps the city even as deemed necessary.
So to just kind of wrap up the whole thing, we got some inspirational images, and these are all from different parks around the country. The first one in the top left there is from Lorry Gardens, which is part of Millennium Park in Chicago. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful park. And one of the things we really liked about that particular image is the way it represents kind of the native landscape and the prairie grasses within the fabric of the urban core of the city. So I think that's something that could be a really cool transformation. The second image, kind of in the top middle, is from Portland. It's the Portland Market. And one of the things I really like about that is it shows you how having an event space that's flexible can really bring the whole community together. The third image in the top right is one of my favorites. It's from Houston. It's called Discovery Green. It's a brand new park right in the downtown of Houston. And Houston downtown used to be very, very deserted. And this park all by itself has transformed the downtown area into a space that people want to come to. And in Houston, where it's routinely 100, 105 degrees and 95% humidity, it's kind of tough to get people to come outside. And this park has done a wonderful job, not only of that, but also it's been such an economic boost for the city. We've got the convention center right nearby. There's 2 brand new hotels, like probably 30-story hotels that have gone up or are going up right around this park. The fourth one in the bottom left is Romare Bearden Park from Charlotte, North Carolina. And that's a really good example of how that flexible space in the center of the park can really serve a variety of uses. The fifth one in the bottom middle is from Bryant Park in New York City. And it's just a little yoga class going on outside in the park, which it's another example of how you can use that flexible space for a lot of different uses and how it can really bring different people from the community together. And then the last one, some of you guys might recognize it. It's Purple Power Play, which I've been learning about this weekend. And we just wanted to put that up there to show that, it's an existing use that's already happening in the park, but think about how it could be reimagined with a huge flexible open space and how much more of the community you could accommodate with that bigger space for this area. And so with that, we're gonna wrap up and introduce the Gateway Group.
We are the last group, actually. So I'm Lauren Harness. I'm a fifth-year architecture student from Garden City, Kansas.
I'm Amy Severson. I'm from Socorro Wells Appel in Philadelphia.
I'm Dylan Rupar. I'm a fifth-year architecture student from Dallas, Texas.
I'm Eric Connor. I'm a fifth-year planning student from Naperville, Illinois.
And I'm Alexis Stensland. I'm a fifth-year planning student from Greensburg. And we just kind of wanted to start off with this image. That's what we used for inspiration for what our part of the project was. The Flint Hills, the tall grass prairie that this region really loves and understands. So our focus was the gateway of Manhattan coming in from the east side. And we really wanted to take the tall grass prairie and the nature and bring it into the city. And so it's another way of inviting visitors in and welcoming you home and letting the residents and people who live here and visit interact with the prairie while they're visiting and while they're living in Manhattan.
So I'm going to walk around a little bit, get my hands dirty. Yeah. So we had this general concept of, again, continuing the Flint Hills into Manhattan. And one of the big ideas that we had for the gateway into the city is building more or less a giant artificial hill that looks like you're going through just another hill in the Flint Hills. And you're going into another one of those ravines that you go through. And you see those lovely valley views, like off to the right and off to the left when you're on 177 and I-70, which sort of diagrammed in this area. Going through one of those big hills as you enter the city, it's just another valley in the Flint Hills. There just happens to be, a bunch of people living in the area. Expanding these other green areas to incorporate those native prairie plants that are so prominent in the region that what make our area diverse, what make our area special. Incorporating commercial development up here in this oranges. So you're removing the mall, but you're still getting a better use of the space. It's a much smaller, compact area, but you're getting just as much commercial development. You're getting just as much tax base from the area, making it special, connecting it with points, which we just said was a main area of the city that we want to develop further and start getting utilized better, connecting with that with the commercial. Promoting the Flint Hills Discovery Center, which we just spent a ton of money on, developing that, bringing more people into the area so they can study the prairie, and they can learn more about the region that we live in and what makes it so special. Linear trail, connecting that into the city as well, as you see in these yellows, potential bike and pedestrian trails, having an elevated bridge to bring you across the river so you get that glorious vista when you're coming around and families are riding their bikes together on a Saturday afternoon, and you can see the river and you can see the parks over here that you can go to as opposed to having to drive and park, and then you can do whatever you want. Using the old train depot station as a trailhead for the linear trail and connecting it back into the city so you can start utilizing the space that we already have and developing the things that we already have started developing, but making them better. And I'm out of excused time for Spanish, so I gotta be really rude and leave, so I'm sorry.
And we, just real quick, we sort of hit on some precedents, sort of examples for how we think our vision will sort of feel. This is Sister Cities Park in Philadelphia. It sort of takes a natural landscape, park environment and sort of merges it with a sort of a public architecture.
This is Quinley Stormwater Park. It's in China. Sort of activates this older development while also, you know, like performing the duties of a stormwater park, but also sort of defining this city's edge. And then Nathan Phillips Square Park sort of, like again, sort of invites nature into like this dense city environment and sort of offering the publics like these sort of interesting spaces.
This is an example of how this can perform economically. It's a performative landscape. It's above is the before and the after. It's kind of in a similar location as the park we're proposing. And this actually increased the adjacent property value 800% since its completion in 2005.
Okay, so the world is becoming more global by the day, right? We're more digitally connected all the time, and Manhattan is more nationally and internationally known than ever before. But so what does that mean here for everyday life? What do we really need to live where we live? So for us, we really believe that this means connecting to the Flint Hills in a kind of tactile, personal sense on a daily basis. So this is the site as it exists today, right? The shopping mall, Points Avenue kind of shooting off into the distance, and here the river disconnected from the city by a lot of different pieces of infrastructure. So what we really envision is kind of a sea change in the face of Manhattan. The first thing that people see as they drive in the morning, a way for people, a new way to actually interact with the river's edge, the way that the infrastructure stormwater group was talking about peeling back that levee and really adding value to this space along the river, and finding a way to bring the really special things about living here into our daily lives. So here you can see there's new development at the end of Points that's now creating a gateway that's sort of mediating between the urban and the natural beyond. And then this is a pedestrian bridge that connects across onto Kanza Prairie and then all the way onto the linear trail around the city.
This basically just shows why we think this site is important. It's also a gateway into the city, but it emphasizes the importance of Points Avenue and how all of this space that's directly next to the river can really be utilized to help manage the stormwater and create a more unique experience to the area. Here, we just want to thank you all for being here, and we'll end off with a recap of all the big images. Thank you.
Stephanie, Barbara. I don't think there's anything else to say. Thank you so much. It's really just an amazing amount of talent, obviously, and power. So thank you for being a part of it with us.
I think the next generation of landscape architects will provide an amazing future. Thank you.
Well, I do think there's a little more to say, and that's thank you. Thank you to all of you for the great work you did and the big ideas that we've given Manhattan. We've really enjoyed learning about your city, and I think you have such an amazing amenity here with the prairie. So don't destroy it, use it, live it, and live your life within walking distance so you're healthy and prosperous and And the gateway idea, to close on that, is just amazing. When we came in with fresh eyes to see your city, it would be nice to have it a tucked surprise behind all the great prairie streetscapes. You'll have planners and designers and others from all over the world coming to look at your prairie streetscapes, and you figure out how to do that. So I think there's a real opportunity to make it a great place to live, and I'm thinking about it myself. So, and I also like to thank, of course, Shane and Peter and all the students for all your time. We know it's a lot, but it's fun. It's been an amazing intergenerational learning opportunity for the students and the emerging leaders and the established leaders to really work together. And it wouldn't have been possible without Landscape Forum. So I'd also like to give a nod to them for their culture of philanthropy and really their commitment and investment in the next generation and the world in which we live. So thank you so much, Richard, and Landscape Forums, and Luann and Gail and everyone here for all the work you did to put this together. And Stephanie, Stephanie, don't hide back there. It's amazing work to host it, and thank you so much for bringing the best out to make this happen.
Now, if we can just build it, furnish it, and light it with Landscape Forums, I'd be very happy. Again, thank you, Kansas State, and everybody for flying in. I feel like I now have 50 new friends, which is really cool, and it's an amazing amount of work in such a short period of time. So that part is very, very cool. Most of you may know that I'm a graduate from the School of Architecture here, so it's sort of freaky to be back here 30-some years later, but it feels really good. So thanks again, Tim, Stephanie, and all of you for coming in. We do have some host gifts, so Tim, if you could join us. This will take you back to your time in Texas, but Stephanie?
I've never been accused of being Dallas moderate.
Stephanie?
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. And to our two distinguished team leaders who, wow, what a contribution. Thank you. So good travels home, and I know all you students have a great future ahead of you, so thank you.